Hey there, it is Rachel, and this is a particularly stressful time for many of us as parents, with most of us going back to school and just things being so different in general. A lot of us are stressed and feeling overwhelmed, and it's when we're stressed and overwhelmed that we as parents are more likely to do the things that we regret. Maybe we're yelling more or being more irritable with our kids, or we're not giving them the things that we think that they need because we are feeling stressed and exhausted. And as I talk to parents, I think we can all agree that we know we're not perfect. We know we're not going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. We know we're not going to do everything right all the time. But it's interesting that knowing that doesn't prevent us from feeling guilty about the mistakes that we make. That's what I'm hearing over and over from parents. I still feel bad about it. And interestingly, guilt in itself isn't a problem. It's when we feel guilty and we don't do something about our guilt that it really starts to drain us. So for example, let's say you're yelling at your kids more, and then you're feeling guilty that you're yelling at your kids more, but you're not doing anything about that guilt. And then because you're feeling guilty and that's sort of draining you, you're yelling even more. And then you get into this cycle, this guilt cycle. Now, I have to tell you that guilt in itself is not a problem. In fact, it's a particularly healthy emotion. One of the researchers and speakers I love most in the world, Brené Brown, some of you may have heard of her. Brené talks about guilt as actually a healthy emotion because it signals to us that we've done something that we feel bad about and we can do something differently in the future. And so if you think about your guilt as something that helps you do something differently in the future, it is no longer going to drain you and it's no longer going to make you feel bad. So what you want to do with this guilt is instead of letting it drain you and instead of recognizing it and saying, oh, there's nothing I can do about it, recognize this guilt and take action on it. And here's the best news, that taking action on guilt does not take extra time than what you're already doing. And it definitely takes less energy than probably what you're already doing. So what action should you take when it comes to feeling guilty? So I encourage you to think about something you've done recently that makes you feel guilty. Maybe it was yelling at your child when you didn't want to. The first thing that you want to do is talk to your child about it. And in my latest podcast episode, I give you a really simple strategy for how you can talk to your kids about your mistakes in a way that actually helps them process whatever they went through and also helps them take a little bit of responsibility for their role in that situation. So you can always go back and talk to your kids about your mistakes. And the other action you want to take is thinking about what you want to do differently going forward. Now, simply ask yourself this question about the situation that you came up with that makes you feel guilty. Just say to yourself, how would I want to handle that differently the next time? Take the 30 seconds it takes to answer that question, and then you'll know how to handle it differently next time. Again, it doesn't take long to ask yourself this question and to do something differently the next time. You just have to be aware of it. You have to acknowledge that you felt that and that you want to do something different. It's that action that changes guilt from something that drains us to something that can actually make situations better. So if you are dealing with a lot of guilt and stress right now, think about one situation that's been rough for you and go back to your child if needed, and then think about what you want to do differently going forward. Now, if you do want to hear more about that strategy that I teach that does not take very long, but really helps your child and supports them even though you were the one that made a mistake, you can check out my latest podcast episode. You can find it on my website at rachel-bailey.com/50, or you can check out any podcast app. The podcast is called Your Parenting Long Game, and you can find episode 50 to talk about how to handle your parenting mistakes. All right, I look forward to seeing you again soon with another tip. Take care.